So you're going to sit down to play Dungeons & Dragons for the first time, but you're not the Dungeon Master. That just means you need a character, and the biggest choice of what character you're going to play is their class. So what classes should you choose? That's what we're tackling today. Let's get talking about that. Disclaimer! Play what you want. Do not let my suggestions overrule your interests. If you want to play a spellcaster, go right ahead. If you want to play one of the paths of the classes I don't suggest here, go ahead. This video is not saying, don't play anything else. This video is saying, these are the least rules you need to know in order to play a character. So this really only matters if you're concerned about learning a lot of rules. If you don't want to have to sit down and parse a whole ton of rules, these are the classes that you should look at playing. Otherwise, go nuts, play what you want. This is all my opinion, this isn't a fact. Now that I have protected myself from the angry, raging comment section, my advice is to pick a melee class. Spellcasting is a huge part of the Dungeons & Dragons experience, but spellcasting involves choosing which spells you want your character to be able to prepare, know, or otherwise have access to, knowing all of the rules exactly for those spells so that you know when they're going to be useful and what they can and cannot do, knowing all of the rules that surround spellcasting, such as how to determine your spellcasting DC, how to know how many spell slots you've got left, whether or not you can cast at a higher level, what components are needed, and so on. Not to mention just the general sense of being aware of all of these options all the time so you know when to use them most effectively. So what are your pure melee character options? Melee characters aren't weaker than spellcasters per se, and they tend to have fewer rule sets to worry about. Even then, some melee classes come with spellcasting powers, like paladins or rangers, even though rangers can technically be built without having to be melee. So, with all that said, let's boil it down to what I think are the 4 simplest classes to tackle for a noob. Those 4 classes are Rogue, Barbarian, Monk, and Fighter. Each of these classes has multiple paths to choose from. I'm not going to list off all of the paths for each class. If you want to know the full breadth of options, this is not the video for you. I'm going to point out what I think is the simplest of each path. Technically speaking, paths don't even happen until level 3, so if you're starting at level 1, you don't even need to know that. Down the list! Rogue is defined by their sneak attack power. Sneak attack is big burst of damage with lots of dice to roll, but only in certain circumstances. Namely, whenever you have advantage on your attack roll, or whenever the target is surprised or being attacked by another ally. Rogues are your classic sneaky, leathery, skill agility types. They're in literally every video game under the sun. There are 2 paths to choose from Rogue that are both equally simple. Assassin will wind up giving you the ability to pop out of stealth and do massive damage for your first couple of rounds of combat, maybe even the first one. I think they get an auto crit. And then there's Thief, which is more versatile and much more nimble, but doesn't wind up doing as much damage. Next up is the Barbarians. The Barbarians are the ones for the people who want to take a beating and also be able to dish one out. Barbarians are about the polar opposite of Rogues. Where Rogues are about sneaky, ambushy, tricksy stuff, Barbarians are literally just walking piles of hit points that hit stuff. Barbarians are all about their rage mechanic. When a Barbarian enters a rage at their player's discretion, Barbarians take less damage and deal more damage. The catch is, if the Barbarian stops going on a rampage, taking damage or dealing it, the rage will end early. Barbarians are limited in the number of rages that they have, so the majority of a player's tactical choices that are derived from their class, and not their role in this case, is all about when to spend for rage. The simplest path for Barbarian is the Frenzied Barbarian. It gives you more options for your rage and makes your rage more powerful. Next up is Monks. Monks are very quick martial artists. Their key defining trait is their ki energy, actually. A monk can spend ki energy to gain some of the maneuverability of a rogue or to make extra attacks. Monks do very well in situations where acrobatics are required, getting things like slow fall and so on as they level up. The open hand is the easiest to play monk path in my opinion. It doesn't involve perusing to learn any individual powers, and it doesn't involve shopping from a list of abilities. Instead, you basically gain the ability to crowd control with a special strike. Fighters are the generic melee warriors, and they can fit almost any character concept you can think of. As the definitive generic melee class, fighters can use any weapon or armor that you can imagine. Almost any weapon or armor that you can imagine. In my opinion, fighters are the simplest class to play, and the simplest path for fighters is Champion. Champion basically lets you, Champion improves, what specifically is it? The Champion path improves your fighting capacity without necessarily adding any rules. It allows you to crit more frequently, and as you level up, will increase the array of weapons that you are most proficient with. And there you have it. Of all those classes, I think the Champion Fighter is the least rules-heavy class that you could possibly be playing. I recommend this only if you want to focus on learning the core mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons in general, instead of focusing on your class's specific abilities. Again, I'm going to close this video out by saying that in no way are any of these classes super difficult for a noob to learn, and you don't need to be intimidated by the rules. But if you were looking for the least rules, there you have it. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or just think I'm wrong and dumb, please tell me down below so that I can tell you all about my bad wrong fun. I'm Evil Squeegee, and I'll catch you guys later. Adios. As a young child, he was whisked away by the fairies of Avalon, raised among the princes and queens of the fair folks' fairy wonderland. He grew to an understanding of magic that only a fae with the blood of mortals could ever hope to achieve. His cunning and dreaming, his magic and knowledge, they bought him anything or anyone he could ever want. And yet still, even with all his heart could ever desire, there was something he sought: to see his human mother once more. Centuries later, he stepped across the boundaries of time and space to reunite with the mortal world to begin his search. The world he found, though, was not that which he remembered from his infancy. Hordes of twitters shouting out a cacophony of conversations greeted him in the marketplace. The loud and sometimes cruel jeering of the crowds at the Twitch theaters. He didn't even know what game wisps were, but here they were aplenty, flaunting their wealth and subscription benefits. The discord of it all was too much to bear. He snapped. Something in him was driven mad. Convinced he could no longer process the insanity of the mortal planes, his heart froze over and his magic turned to cruelty and chaos. This is where you come in. You are his brother, many years old. Your parents are long dead, but they always loved their twin children so dearly. You can't rightly kill the Fae, your own brother out of his time. What do you do?